Yo, welcome to Six Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Six Slayer, chilling with Mark, the honorable villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? We got a brilliant artist with some beautiful work. I've seen him in person, and he's a surgeon with a brush. Let him know who we got, Mike.
Joining us today, we have comic book creator Tomm Coker joining us. But before we chop it up with Tom, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right, our next guest is the artist for Black Monday Murders. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Slam, we bring to you Tomm Coker. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Fantastic, man. This is our second European interview, so we're feeling big time right now. You're out in Barcelona, Spain. Digging.
I am, yes.
Well, hey, we're gonna just dive right on in. Since this is your first time joining us on the show, Tom, we like to get your comic book origin story. In other words, how did you get your first gig in pro comics?
Oh man, that's a complicated story. How deep a dive do you want on that?
We want to hear whatever the origin is, man. We're here for it.
Okay. The simple version is, I had my son Andrew when I was in high school. I was 16, and I had to get a job suddenly. And the only thing I could do was draw, and I drew all the time, every day, and I wanted to draw comic books. And so I took my GED. I got out at 16 or whatever, and I spent a year and a half doing nothing but drawing for 10 hours a day. And I went to San Diego, and I showed my samples around, and I got a bite from DC, and I did a book there. I only did a couple issues of a book called Xenobrood, which was they wanted me to, at that point, if you could hold a pencil and do anything that looked even remotely like Art Adams or Rob Liefeld or Jim Lee or whatever, you could get work. And so I was really fortunate in that sense. And so I did this book for a couple issues, and then Eric Larson poached me to go over to do a book for him. And again, I was doing like an Art Adams, Jim Lee thing. And when that issue wrapped up, I decided I'd never wanted to draw another book that looked like somebody else again. And so, or I didn't want to have to be told to draw like somebody else. And you say everybody has influences and everybody resembles other people. And so at that point, I took about a year off because royalties were great back then, and learned how to draw.
Can you tell us about how you got involved with Homage and Wildstorm?
I was working at Penthouse Comics way back. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I guess they relaunched it, right? So it's coming out again.
Yeah.
And the chief editor there and the art director, they were friends with Scott Doombeer over at Homage. And so when I wrapped up my work there at Penthouse, they were kind enough to pass my stuff along to Scott. And Scott had never edited before, but he was going to be editing his first book, and so he hired me, and we kind of learned how to do it together. And that was called the Gen 13 Max. It was a crossover.
Mm-hmm.
And so they moved me down to San Diego or to La Jolla for, I don't know, I was down there for a couple months. And Adam Hughes was down there at that time. And who else was down there? I mean, Travis had already left. Mark had already left. But it was like Jim and Scott and Adam and me and Ryan Benjamin and Dan Norton and I think was Ryan there, JJ Kirby, all these guys. It was fantastic because we'd go to the studio every day. It was 2 blocks from the beach. And just, there was a bunch of awesome guys, and they had a big screen Street Fighter in the bullpen Street Fighter video game. And we would just sit there and draw for 10 or 12 hours and just talk shit to each other. It was so fun. I remember Adam, he was already Adam Hughes at that point. It wasn't like everybody was intimidated by Adam. And but he threw a lot of shit away. Like he would all day he would draw and draw, and then he'd draw and draw. And I would generally work later, and so he would go home before I did, and I would always sneak into his office and go through his waste paper basket and try to find all the sketches he'd thrown away. And so that's how I worked at Homage, and I did that, and then I did Gen 13 bootleg or something like that.
Gen
did
13
some Stormwatch. A bit later, I did some Stormwatch stuff, and I did a book called Nightfall that was a creator-owned thing that was just 3 issues. But I always loved working for Wildstorm and Image in general, but Homage in particular, because they were just really great. And I wish I knew Jim better. I was a little frightened of Jim, and so I kind of kept my distance to a certain extent. But everybody was always really wonderful and kind, and always really open and welcoming. And there was a lot of just amazing people there. Aaron Weisenfeld was there at that time, and so Richard Friend.
Tom, I wanted to ask you another question about early in your career. How did you end up working with Judd Winick early in his career on Blood and Water, and what was your collaborative process like?
With Judd, I had just finished that series, the Nightfall series at Homage, and that last particular job was sort of frustrating, and so I had decided I was never going to draw a comic again. I was just really frustrated by it, and so I got into toy design, and I did that for a couple of years, and inadvertently that was really where I developed my style, because suddenly I didn't have an inker anymore. I wasn't worried about a colorist. It was just me doing everything, and that's really where I developed what I do. And my wife, we were just my girlfriend at the time, her roommate was Judd's cousin, I think. And I lived in Northern California, and Judd was in the Bay Area, I think, in San Francisco. And she said, "Oh, Judd's going to be at a convention. Do you want to go over and meet Judd?" And I said, "Oh, sure. Let's go. We'll go chat with Judd." And I didn't know who the hell Judd was at that point. And I mean, I knew he won a Pulitzer for Pedro and Me, but I didn't know anything about like the real world or any of that shit.
Right.
And I met Judd at this, I think it was Ape in San Francisco, the Ape show. And we hit it off, and I showed him. I had a bunch of the toy design stuff I'd done. I brought it down with me, and so it was kind of like the new improved version of me, where I was inking everything and I was finishing all of it and stuff. And he said, "Hey, I have this book I'm doing at Vertigo," and I said, with rose tinted glasses on, I said, "Oh, sure, comics sounds like fun." And so I've been doing comics again ever since. The collaboration, I mean, we went through a lot of editors on that book, and it was a very chaotic experience, because I think we had 3 or 4 editors, and finally Heidi McDonald and Shelley Bond were the last of them, I think. And once Shelley became involved and Heidi we sorted everything out, then it was great. It was just that maybe the first 2 issues were just like, it was just very chaotic. And the collaboration was really like, he would send me a script. I'd ask him a ton of questions and tell him what I wanted. You know, can I change this? Can I do that? Can I do whatever? And I don't think there was a single time he ever said no. I mean, it was just like, yeah, do whatever you're going to do. And it was hard for me because I hadn't drawn a comic in like 3 or 4 years at that point, I think, or like 2 or 3 years, I guess. And so I kind of relearned how to do everything and to match what I was doing at that point. And so it was a really great learning experience. And Judd was great, and everybody else was great. So, and I think the book turned out well.
Well, Tom, you've been in the game since the late 90s, but it seems that you've had some professional works in other realms of entertainment like film and toys
Yeah.
and board games. Was making comics the catalyst for other creative directions, or was that the plan the whole time?
All the other stuff that was drawing related came out of my comics experience. Like I wouldn't have had those experiences if I hadn't drawn comics. And but the film stuff and the directing and the stuff like that, that all was very when I was deciding to get back into comics right before Blood and Water, I told him I try to be pragmatic in my approach to this stuff, and so I thought I'm never going to be able to outdo Jim Lee at what Jim Lee does. I'm never going to be able to outdo whoever, Mike Mignola or John Paul Leon or Mark Silvestri or any of these guys who are just really wonderful, you know. And so I had to figure out like, well, what do I do? And that's distinct. And I kind of settled on storytelling because at that time, storytelling was not something that a lot of people did. I mean, everybody did storytelling, but I wanted to really push it into a much more cinematic and like I basically wanted to do Orson Welles in a comic book or do David Lean or something. And so once I kind of decided that was what I was going to focus on, and that's how. And I was still bringing all of the influences, like Jim and Mignola or Mike and Mark Silvestri is a big influence and all these guys. And so I was still bringing all that along with me, but I really wanted to make the focus not on how well I could draw anatomy, but on how well I could tell a story. And that sort of led to me discussing directing and discussing film work and boards and other things. And then I did some commercial stuff and I worked on a film or a couple of films, and then after that we wrote a script and we said I want to direct, and that was that. I don't know how or why they said okay, but they did.
Okay, perfect segue here. So you're directing films. Can you tell us the difference between filmmaking and making comic books?
Filmmaking, the 110 people in a soundstage waiting for you to tell them what to do, and comics is one guy in a room by himself drawing a picture. I mean, that's the big difference. And in comics, the financial risk is it's significant if you're a comic book creator, but if you're a Hollywood production, like the cost of making a comic is marginal. And so for me, the big things I found were, like I said, you have 110 people standing around waiting for you to tell them what to do. And the financial risks are enormous. And so you have that pressure. But as far as the actual work, it's really frenetic and it's really high paced, but essentially it's the same. I mean, I had a DP that I really connected with, named Maxime Alexandra. He did High Tension and a whole tons of stuff with Alexander Aja. He was his DP, and fantastic. And so I would sit there and I would draw my storyboards, and I'd show Max, and we'd, as soon as he, this is an example, like when it was our first day on set and I had drawn these boards and I said, I want a tight shot on Shannon. Shannon Sossaman was the lead actress. And from, was she Knight's Tale and a bunch of other stuff. Wonderful lady. And I said, I want a close up on her eyes because I want to get this reaction shot. And so he set up a close up and there was about 6 inches of space above her head. And it came down to about her nipples. That was the term they used. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, we call that an American. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, that's what a close-up is considered in America. Like if you're making an American movie, this is a close-up. And I was like, you're out of your mind. Like, And so then I started sitting down and drawing these, like, you know, this is a close-up of eyes, not this. And as soon as we were able to communicate that clearly with each other, where I could say, I could draw him a picture and say, that's what I want. And he forgot all that other stuff, you know, about this is an American and whatever and so on. And then it was just like, it was off to the races. It was awesome. And I loved every minute of it. And the work I think that him and I did together is I just watched it again. For some reason, I was looking at something a few weeks ago, and I was just like, "This is beautiful." Like our version of the movie was never released due to things beyond our control. But the version of our movie is it's a low budget horror film that takes place in a tunnel underground. So it's never going to be Lawrence of Arabia, but yeah, I think it was wonderful. And I think that everything I do in comics is visible in what we did with that film.
That's what I was about to ask. So your artistic sensibilities actually help with your actual filmmaking. And so my question to you, what came first? Your desire to make more storytelling, because you was talking about you would start to evolve into more of a storytelling approach, and did that aid into the actual filmmaking storytelling? So did you make the artistic transition first?
Yeah, I did. I mean, because like I'm trying to think of it, like because it's a high competition. And I'm a very competitive person when it comes to this particular thing, you know, and so like if I'm competing with literally everybody else who draws a comic book to get a job, you know, I'm not going to beat Art Adams at what Art Adams does. I'm not going to beat Mike Mignola at what Mike Mignola does. I'm not going to beat, you know, if you try to beat somebody at their own game, you're going to get your ass handed to you. And so what I decided was I have to figure out what my game is. Wow, that worked out much better than I expected. And then be able to, you know, I mean, it took time and a lot of energy and you know, I had good things and bad things and whatever and so on, but my goal was to basically create a way to tell a story and lay out pages and in comics that was unlike anybody else, and really take the what I had learned already from film and from design and composition and stuff like that, and really apply it to my pages, but also not to do it in a way that somebody could look at it and say, well, that's really beautiful composition. It looks like Mignola. Or that's a really beautiful, you know, layout. It looks like whoever, you know, Mobius or Art Adams or Rob Liefeld or whatever. And so when I jump to the film stuff, we're doing horror. Horror is all I've ever wanted to do. And it's what I've always been good at drawing and telling those types of stories. And it's literally a woman stuck in a tunnel underground in Paris with a bunch of skeletons and a crazy person chasing her. She's alone for about 75% of the movie. And she has this flashlight, and the flashlight is actually the only light we used for about 2/3 of the filming, because it was like a search and rescue flashlight, and like there was a warning that said, like, if you shined it into somebody, if you were to shine it into somebody's face for long enough, it would blind them and you could be charged with use of a deadly weapon. I mean, it was like an obscenely bright flashlight, and so that allowed the me to go, okay, this can be as black and dark and scary and I can take everything I do in a comic and apply it to this particular story because I mean, it was designed to be that way. You know, it was designed to be something that could be that could translate what I do directly onto into film.
Tom, I want to ask you about one of the projects I think is very cinematic. Can you give us any updates on the Black Monday murders?
Black Monday, I loved the book, and it is what I know right now is that issues 9 and 10 are done, or I should say my work on those issues are done, and at a certain point I was diagnosed with a thing that kind of laid me up for a bit. And then Jonathan his schedule got crazy because he's doing all the, I guess, Marvel stuff or whatever. And so then this enormous hiatus was created on Black Monday. And during that time, you know, I got enough script to finish issues 9 and 10. And they're wonderful. They're so good. I'm sorry, they're really good, and I can't share any of it with anybody. But he and I have spoken regularly, and there's it's not like we had a falling out or anything like that. We're going to finish the book. It's just a matter of when he can. I don't want to throw him under the bus because it's not just on him. You know, like I had my issues with being sick and stuff. But we will have them done as soon as we can get them done. That's the political way to say that.
Well, Tom, how did you first get involved with that book? How did you first get involved with the Black Monday murders?
I had just finished designing a show for someone, for Film Roman, I think. I was sitting at home and I was thinking, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do next. And I hadn't done a comic in a while, and I didn't have a lot of comic connections anymore at that point because there'd been a lot of turnover at Marvel and so forth at that particular instant. And literally it was like the day I was sitting there going like, man, I got to figure out how to get back into comics because that's what I want to do and that's what I like doing. And then I was putting my kid to bed, my daughter, and I started getting these texts and messages and DMs and all this stuff saying, oh, Jonathan Hickman's trying to get a hold of you. And I was like, well, I don't know who the fuck Jonathan Hickman is, but I'm putting my kid to bed right now. And so this can wait until morning. But I guess he had put on Twitter or something like, does anybody know how to get a hold of Tomm Coker? And I later realized I did know who Jonathan was because we'd met once before, but that was before he was Jonathan. It was, you know, like Pax Romana, is that what it is? Like the early stuff that he was drawing and everything. Mm-hmm. And he had written this script with me in mind, and he sent me a copy of it, and I gotta be honest, like the first couple months I was like, or the first month I was just like, I don't know what's going on here. Like I'm really confused, and I didn't understand like all the Jonathan stuff, like the symbols, and because none of that, I don't get any of that in the script. Like it just says, you know, it just says scene break here, insert, you know, email chain or whatever, you know, I don't get any of that stuff. And so I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And I'd seen some books and I knew that he did things, but, and also it was, you know, the way I'm used to drawing, or at that time I was used to drawing comics. I wasn't accustomed to so much talking. I mean, I did joke that I often was asked to draw like the Party of Five issue of whatever book I was doing. Like, you know, if it was Wolverine, it was Wolverine in a kitchen with you know, trying to make spaghetti for the rest of the X-Men, and something went zanyly wrong or something. And for this book, for Black Monday, it took me a long time to figure out that it was okay to really focus on the characters' expressions and their reactions and to really play with like silent beats, you know, where you have a talk, nothing, talk. You know, you get that breath where you know that the characters are digesting what's just been said. And so when I finally did get my bearings, I guess, it was like it was really eye-opening. Like it I think it advanced what I do in a way that I could have not, I would not have ever figured out without working on this particular book.
What was your collaborative process like working with Terry Moore back in the early days of Homage? Because I thought that was cool that you had a chance to work with him.
I love Terry. I mean, I love the Strangers in Paradise and all that stuff. We didn't communicate that much. I mean, we did chat, and I had told him that I wanted to do a cleaner approach than I had done with like the Gen 13 Max stuff, and be less cartoony. And he really embraced that and was really encouraging for that. I was a huge Jamie Hewlett fan, and I was trying to. Around that time, I saw a couple other artists who were also huge Jamie Hewlett fans, and they could do a much better Jamie Hewlett than I was ever going to be able to do. And so I thought, okay, I can't do this. Like this is going to be a dead end, or I'm just going to get lumped in with another group of people that I want to stand out from. And so Terry was very positive about all that kind of stuff. And story-wise, I didn't have much to say. I got the scripts and I drew what he said. I think for the most part. But the little we did, or the amount we did talk early in the project, and then after it was done, I thought he was a really wonderful guy who was very encouraging.
What about your art process? Because throughout the years, you have a very expansive career. Close pushing on 3 decades now. Has anything about your art process changed over time? Are you doing any digital work, or is everything still pencil, ink, brush?
I mean, I think my ability to draw has improved. Obviously, if you do it that much, it's got to improve. But and the digital thing, I draw on my little Cintiq right here, and I use like SketchUp and stuff like that to do models, and I shoot tons of photo ref because what I'm doing is so goddamn realistic that you can't just sit there and make it up. And so it's broadened a bit, and I know that my early stuff was like the Art Adams, Rob Liefeld stuff, and then I had this period where I was trying to find my footing, and that includes the Wildstorm stuff, I think, basically up until Blood and Water. From that point forward, it's just been basically like a straight progression, like just a logical progression of getting better or trying new tools or adding something here and there. And I really try to think like, what is, I try not to have, this is not true at all, but I try not to have an ego about, I want to serve the story. Like, I don't want to bend the story to fit what I do. I want to adapt what I do to fit that particular story. Like, there's certain guys that I don't, like, you wouldn't ask David Fincher to do a comedy, or you wouldn't, ask, I don't know, now I'm kind of going to space out, but I try to make sure that, like, if I do a Daredevil book, and it's set in Prohibition era New York, Hell's Kitchen, then I want what I'm doing for that particular job to reflect that entirely. And so it does mean that things change visually. Like on Black Monday, it's gotten progressively cleaner, the work I do. And it's become much more, like what you would think of traditional comic stuff, like, it's all brush and it's all quills and markers and stuff. But again, I think that serves the story.
What would you say is the most difficult aspect of what you do as an artist? What's the most challenging thing?
That's a hard question to answer because I really do love doing it. I think it's all fun. I mean, I often tell people, like, there's no better feeling than finishing whatever it is you're working on and it's good. And for me, it's funny because, I mean, I guess the most difficult process would just be maintaining your stamina. Like, I know that's not what you're looking for, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's just getting up every goddamn day and sitting down and just drawing. That can be it's a very demanding job, in the sense that, like, I can start out in the morning drawing Washington DC, and in the afternoon I'm drawing Atlantis, and those, you have to make everything equally believable and all fit together, and you have to constantly be, it's like this you're coordinating this massive it's this massive orchestrated piece that, from page 1 to page whatever the finish line is, you have to be aware of where it's going and what you're doing, and maintaining some version of consistency and build, and I think just maintaining the stamina is the thing that I find most difficult. And when I get into a job and I'm doing pages, that's much easier than when I'm doing like right now I'm doing a bunch of covers and pinups and commissions and stuff like that. And that stuff's much harder because for me, because when I'm working on Daredevil or Black Monday or whatever, like, you kind of settle into a rhythm, and you can expand into that project. Whereas with a cover, if I'm doing 2 covers this week, and one's Superman and one's Green Lantern or whatever, those characters have nothing to do with each other, and so I have to go, like, well, how do I draw Superman? I haven't drawn Superman since I was probably 17 or 18 years old. So how do I draw Green Lantern? I think I drew some Green Lantern trading cards a long time ago. And so that can be much harder to maintain for me, to maintain my through line, I guess.
Tom, so now that you're living out in Spain, what's the comic art scene like out there compared to here in the States?
I mean, I've met a lot of really great artists. I'm not going to go into names because I know I'm going to forget people, and that's I don't want to do that. But and I mean, the shops out here are beautiful. The scene is really there was the Barcelona convention a few months back, and it was, it was a really well supported and organized scene and all that kind of stuff, and the publisher that does the Spanish edition of Black Monday, Norma, they're just down the road here, and so I hang out with my editor from there a lot, and some other people from that place, and I find it's I guess the biggest difference is that I don't know how to say that. The biggest difference is that when I meet people, they show me what they're doing, I don't automatically, their influences are different. So the work I actually get to see is different. Like, I don't like, they don't draw like an American. There's just
Right.
some sort of difference about it.
They have different archetype characters or archetype styles that are not as familiar.
And just different cultural influences and I do a life drawing thing I do on Wednesdays and Fridays when I get the time out to go do it. And and there's a handful of people there that go to there's a big comic book school here. That's awesome. And a couple of people go there. I'm just amazed at how well everybody can draw.
I think one of the biggest DC artists is from Spain, Jorge Jimenez. Yeah, he's. Have you met him, or have you crossed paths with him being out there?
Yeah, yes, and what is he doing right now?
Batman.
Yeah, but now is he now doing?
He's about to do something else, but I don't think they announced it yet. But he's with Chip Zdarsky on Batman until Jim Lee does Batman again. They're doing Hush again.
Yeah, I've met a bunch of guys, but the thing that's most amazing to me is like I really am a big advocate of life drawing, because it's great to know anatomy and it's great to know this and that and whatever, and it's great to have your own style or whatever. But if you don't know how to draw the shit, it's always going to you're always going to come up short, I think. And I think life drawing is the best way to really learn how to draw what you're seeing. Like you can, and it makes you think about things a certain way. And I'm just amazed that, like, in the States, I tell people, like, oh, you should, if I were you, you obviously are driven and you have ability and you're working toward this goal. If I were you, I'd go to some life drawing sessions and really learn how to draw what you're doing here. And people are always kind of like, because they like me, they learned how to draw from comics, initially. That was what we all were doing. And these people, like, I look at their stuff and I'm like, God damn, every one of these people knows how to draw. Like they all know. Like I go to these life drawing classes and I'm like, yep, like every one of these people is good at it. Like it's a little humbling, to be honest, but at the same time, it's super fun because it's just really exciting to see other people that are good at what they do and get to exchange ideas and rub elbows and such.
Our very last question. Is there something that we haven't talked about that you want the fans to know about? Any upcoming appearances, any new projects?
What am I working on right now? I can't really say anything I'm working on right now because it's all a little, none of it has been announced yet. But I'm doing a bunch of covers for Distillery and what else? Yeah, that's really about all I can really talk about at this particular moment in time.
Can we get a hint?
And Black Monday's coming. I mean, it's out there, so it's everybody always. There was a guy on Facebook who was saying that I should be fired and replaced, and because it was obviously all my fault, and I was just like, so. But it is getting produced and it is out there.
Well, Tomm, thank you so much for joining us, man. This was great. You always have a home here on the 6 Layer Station, and all the stuff that you are upcoming, we will be promoting as well. So thank you so much. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is 6 Layers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Tomm Coker. We are out. Peace.
6 Layers.